Good morning. This is Dylan Jovine from Behind the Markets. Happy Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, November 19th. Thanksgiving is next week. I am so excited. So anyway, today I wanted to weigh in on Trump's much talked about pick for Treasury Secretary. He's really working this out, as is his way, largely in public. And you have some people pushing for Bob Lighthizer, who is the guy who architected his kind of anti-tariff policy in his first term, and they're pushing for him to be Treasury Secretary now. You have a group of people that are pushing for people like Lutnick from Cantor Fitzgerald to be Treasury Secretary. I'm going to tell you this right now. Think about what a Treasury Secretary needs to have. And this is my view, and it's certainly the kind of anybody who understands anything on Wall Street's view. Basically, to be a Treasury Secretary in today's America, you have to have somebody who knows Wall Street and finance at a very high level. I wish we could go back to the days where we could pick somebody like Paul O'Neill, George W. Bush, pick Paul O'Neill to be Treasury Secretary for his first term. Paul O'Neill was a former CEO of Alcoa, steel guy, etc. But you can't pick Treasury Secretaries out of the steel or any other sector anymore. They all have to come from Wall Street. So Bob Lighthizer, despite everybody's love of his tariff policies, etc., he can't work as Treasury Secretary for one reason and one reason only. We are financing deficits that are 6% of GDP, which is basically a couple $1 trillion a year. So basically, what does a Treasury Secretary do this day and age? They sell bonds, they sell debt, basically. So they have to have super deep connections to all the big Wall Street firms, BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, all of the firms, Bank of America, in America. They have to have deep connections to Japanese firms, Saudi Arabian firms, German firms, French firms, English firms that buy debt, basically. Because remember, we are selling $200 billion of debt every month, at least. Some months it's more. Unfortunately, what a Treasury Secretary this day and age has to do is be able to find out if there are buyers for the debt that we're selling at the rates that we want to sell our debt at. For example, let's say the Treasury Secretary wants to sell 30-year bonds, and there's not really much appetite in America, so they call Saudi Arabia. Now, the Treasury Secretary doesn't do this. They give the job to Goldman Sachs or BlackRock or whoever's running the book, and those people call their clients all around the world and say, hey, you want to buy these $50 billion of 30-year debt? Now, what's going to happen is Goldman Sachs or whoever's running the book, it used to be Salomon Brothers, they would push back to the Treasury Secretary and say, look, nobody's interested in your 30-year debt paying 4.5%. You got to go higher. Basically, the Treasury Secretary this day and age really has to have deep connections in the world of finance, because the job that takes up most of their time, unfortunately now, is selling debt to fund these absurd and unhealthy deficits. You can't really go back to George W. Bush, who was pretty much the last person to try a corporate America Treasury Secretary. Again, and Paul O'Neill, nice guy, but he didn't understand that we were running deficits even then to finance the war in Iraq. But he really just wasn't equipped for the interactions that job required. He didn't understand finance. Bob Lighthizer has some great ideas, really instrumental in a lot of policy, but he's just not going to have the connections to get on the phone and to finance this kind of debt. So for better or for worse, in today's America, we need a Treasury Secretary that really knows Wall Street. That's why it's important to weigh in, because there's a whole contingent of folks that I know that are pushing for Lighthizer to really take that role. It would just be a disaster. I think Lighthizer is good in trade, really solid with tariffs and all these other things. But Treasury Secretary, no way, not reasonable. Anyway, that's all I wanted to share. I wanted to riff a little bit with you on this lovely Tuesday. I hope you have a great day.